So this one, I'm hoping, will give you a lot more understandings of things. Chapter is about 20 pages. So probation, the living image. Out of the ranks of earnest students and workers of the kind I have already described, the master has on many occasions selected his pupils. But before he definitely accepts them, he takes special precaution to assure himself that they are really the kind of people whom he can draw into intimate contact with himself. And that is the object of the stage called probation. When he thinks of a man as a possible pupil, he usually asks one who is already closely linked with him to bring the candidate to him astrally. There is not generally much ceremony connected with this step. The master gives a few words of advice, tells the new pupil what will be expected of him, and often, in his gracious way, he may find some reason to congratulate him on the work that he has already accomplished. That's why I'm like, you've done a lot of good work. You deserve good things. He then makes a living image of the pupil, that is to say, he molds out of the mental, astral, and etheric matter an exact counterpart of the causal, mental, astral, and etheric body of the neophyte, and keeps that image at hand so that he may look at it periodically. Every I'm putting two words together, that's why my brain's scrambling here. So that every variation of thought and feeling in him is accurately reproduced in it by sympathetic vibration, and thus by single glance at the image, and the master can see at once whether during the period since he last looked at it there has been any sort of disturbance in the body which it represents, whether the man has been losing his temper or allowing himself to be prey to impure feelings, worry, depression, or anything of the kind. It is only after he has seen that for a considerable time no serious excitement has taken place in the vehicle represented by the image that he will admit the pupil into near relation with himself. And this is where these higher beings don't just bring in anybody because you affect them. It brings their energies down. It does things. And this is where even if you're spiritual and you're meant to be a teacher, if you surround yourself with negative things, eventually you're going to get pulled down into that. And it's going to eventually affect you. And this is where you got to really be careful when you're trying to teach and do things. When the pupil is accepted, he must be drawn into a unity of his master closer than anything he can imagine or understand. The master wants to blend his aura with his own, so that through it his forces may be constantly acting without special attention on his part. But a relation so intimate as this can act in one direction only. If among the vibrations of the pupil there are some which would cause disturbance in the astral and mental bodies of the adept as they react upon him, such union would be impossible. The prospective pupil would have to wait until he had rid himself of those vibrations. A probationary pupil is not necessarily better than other people who are not on probation. He is only more suitable in certain ways for the master's work, and it is advisable to subject him to a test time. For many people, swept upwards by enthusiasm, appear at first to be most promising and eager to serve, but unfortunately become tired after a while and slip back. The candidate must conquer any emotional failings that he may have and go on steadily working until he becomes sufficiently calm and pure. When for quite a long time there has been no serious upheavals in the living image, the master may feel that the time has come when he can usefully draw the pupil nearer to him. Hey, Oracle. We must not think of the living image as recording only defects or disturbances. It mirrors the whole condition of the pupil's astral mental conscious, so it should record much of the benevolent and joyousness and should radiate forth peace on earth and goodwill to men. Never forget that not only a passive but also an active goodness is always a prerequisite for advancement. To do no harm is already much, but remember that it is written of our great exemplar that he went about doing good. And when the Lord Buddha was asked to epitomize the whole of his teachings in one verse, he began, "Cease to do evil," but immediately continued, "Learn to do good." And that's what you have to do. You got to learn to do good. If a pupil on probation does something unusually good for a moment, the master flashes a little more attention on him, and if he sees fit, he may send a wave of encouragement of some sort, or he may put some work in the pupil's way to see how he does it. So this is where they can even bring you challenges, and people are like, I don't want to work with that person. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go there. And then you just fail the teacher. That's where sometimes I get such a kick out of people. They're always talking about fifth dimension and that, and then right away the littlest thing comes along and they put a butt plug in and they turn around and they take a deep breath and they run for the hills. If a pupil on probation does something unusually good for the moment, the master flashes a little more attention on him, and if he sees fit, he may send a wave of encouragement of some sort, or he may put some work in the pupil's way to see how he does it. Generally, however, he delegates that task to some of his senior pupils. We are supposed to offer opportunities to the candidate, and that's what the universe puts, opportunities all in front of us. What are you going to reach out and take? Hello, Athena. Hey, Professor. Oh, there's somebody here who's on Instagram who has a really interesting name that came on. And he is a professor, and that's what I talked about earlier when people are in their base chakras. Like this guy's name on Instagram, it says he lives in his base chakra, and he's very proud of it. He calls himself the professor. Generally, however, he delegates the task to some of his senior pupils. We are supposed to offer opportunities to the candidate, but to do so is a serious responsibility. If the person takes the opportunity, all is well. But if he does not, it counts as a bad mark against him. We should often like to give opportunities to people, but we hesitate because although if they take them, it will do them much good. If they do not take them, it will be a little harder to do so next time. So each time you don't want to do things, you bring down your energy more and more and more. Okay, it will be seen then that the link of the pupil on probation with his master is chiefly one of observation and perhaps occasional use of the pupil. It is not the custom of the adept to employ special or sensational tests, but in general, when an adult is put on probation, he is left to follow the ordinary course of his life, and the way which the living image reproduces his response to the trials and the problems of the day gives quite sufficient indication of his character and progress. That's where I get put in really challenging, difficult things, and yet I try to go through them and do what I'm supposed to. And sometimes it really affects me in all kinds of ways, and it's hard to stay grounded and try to do good by people that, sometimes are doing all kinds of silly things. And for this, the master concludes that the person will make a satisfactory discipline. He will draw him near and accept him. Sometimes a few weeks is sufficient to determine this. Sometimes the period stretches into years. younger probationers. And so somebody who's just coming off alcohol and drugs and things, or young probation, they're just starting on their path. Because the time is exceptional, many young people have been put on probation in recent years, and their parents and older members of the society have sometimes wondered how it is that, notwithstanding their own sincere sacrifice and labor, often extending over 20, 30, or even 40 years, they are passed over and the young people are chosen. The explanation is simple. It has been your karma to work all of this time preparing yourself and preparing the way for coming to the world teacher. And just because you are good old members, you have attracted some of the souls who have been working up to a high level of development in previous incarnations, so that they have been born to you as children. And you must not be surprised if you sometimes find that those who in the physical body are their children are in other and higher worlds far older in development than you are. And this is where the young children now are born, and they're in really, really high energy, really gifted, really, really conscious. They see the future. They know what they're going to be doing in the future. They see themselves as adults. They see their past lives. They see all kinds of things. It's really, really interesting. So children are in other and higher worlds, far older in development than you are. So some people are, been practicing spirituality for all this time, and then they're all of a sudden here's this child, and this child came in, and like I say, some of these kids you can't teach. They're so aware of everything, and some of them are meant to be your teachers and things like that. That's where it's like respecting. If a boy or girl suddenly enters into a close relation with a master, such relations as you have already ventured to think of for yourself, even after many years of meditation and hard work, do not be astonished. Your child may be capable of soaring far beyond you, but it is just because he has the capacity that his birth and education have been entrusted to you, who have been studying the working so long on theosophical lines. In the course of that study, you should have learnt to be an ideal parent. The kind of parent requires for the body of an advanced ego. Instead of being perplexed or surprised, you should rejoice with exceeding great joy that you have been found worthy to train the physical footsteps of one who shall be among the saviors of the world. And that's why I always say, who's the teachers of the children? Like really, like who are the teachers? And this is where it's like I try to teach children. These young kids, they come up to me and they just tell me everything. And it's really, really amazing. And there's so many of them now, and some elders are like, you shut up. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what you're doing. I'm like, don't say that to kids. When these kids are talking, you need to stop and listen. When they're talking about their past lives and all kinds of other things. Very cool. Deadly Blackfoot Ma, your 11-year-old is really connected with her higher self. Beautiful. Hi, Saipo Collections. You still there, Professor? Candice? I hope you're still there. Because I think maybe you realize, like when I'm reading this, your child maybe came in to bring in really, really big energy and everything. Very cool. You may wonder perhaps how mere children can appreciate and honor which comes to them, can grasp the splendor and the glory of it all. Do not forget that is the ego who is initiated, the ego who is taken as a pupil. Truly must obtain such control over his lower vehicles that they will be, to a certain considerable extent, an expression of him, so at least that will not get in the way of the work which has to be done. But it is he, the ego, who has to do that work and to make the development, and you do not know how much of it he may have already achieved in the previous births. And this is where in past lives you earned really lots of things. And I say you can go to your Akashic Records and down stuff you've already earned and learned. But these children are coming in with lots and lots of things. They're way beyond some of us, even what we understand. They see into the future. They know everything. And you're given an opportunity to raise these little masters. In the native culture, we pray for the little grandmothers and grandfathers because they're the teachers of the future. They're the healers. And they're bringing in lots of blessings and things, and it's important. So every time I go to native ceremonies, I pray for all the little children on the earth and the ones being born because they're the new Adams and Eves. They're going to be in the fifth dimension. They're not going to be living in the chaos that we did. They're going to do amazing things. Some of them will live millions of years. They will, like I say, they're going to be mind blowing. Many of those who are coming into incarnation just now are highly evolved souls. And this is where my granddad realized who I was. And he trained and taught me. And he allowed me to choose and figure it out. Many of those who are coming into incarnation just now are highly evolved souls. It is precisely of such advanced egos that the great group of disciples who will stand around the world teacher must be constituted. Those who become pupils early in life may well have been pupils for many years in previous lives. And this is where you might have mastered Buddhism already. This is where you might have mastered Sikhism already. This is where you might have mastered Christianity already. But people are trying to go back there and they're trying to follow these dogmas. And you need to evolve and grow past that. Yeah, sometimes people do that. Even our own family will pass on and then come back and be a part of your life. So you can teach them. It's like my grandfather, when he's ready to reincarnate, maybe somehow I'll end up being his teacher for what he did for me, or my mother. And maybe she'll choose to come in, and then I will be the one that will teach her. And so this is where you don't know. And this is where you do the work, even if you have somebody difficult and challenging. Those who become pupils early in life may well have been pupils for many years in previous lives, and the greatest privilege that we elder people can have is that we find ourselves associated with these young ones. For through them we can further the Lord's work on earth by training them to do it more perfectly. In the chapters on our relations to children in the hidden side of things. So this book, Hidden Side of Things, there's a chapter on our relationships with children. I have dealt at considerable length with what is necessary for training of children. So if you buy this book, it's going to help you to understand how to teach your child to become everything they're meant to be. That they may preserve all that is best in what they are bringing from the past, and may develop into full flowers of many beautiful characteristics of their nature, which are so greatly, alas, results destroyed by uncomprehending elders. And there's really lots of elders out there, and they mistreat children and that. And I'm like, and nobody should do that. And you say the children coming into the world are very, very special. I'll read the name of the book again. It's called The Hidden Side of Things. That they may preserve all that is best in what they are bringing from the past, and may develop into full flowers the many beautiful characteristics of their nature, which are so generally, alas, ruthlessly destroyed by uncomprehending elders. There I have spoken, among other things, of the devastating effects of fear induced in children by roughness and cruelty. And this is where people were mean to me as I grew up. Man, they were mean. Always trying to do real bad things. AJ Sunday, Begwitch. Book is The Masters and the Path. Uh, unspeakable, terrible results which sometimes follow in its wake. Parents who have children of an age to be sent to school cannot be too careful and searching in their inquiries before they entrust their children to the instructor, lest ineradicably harm, ineradicable, ineradicable harm be done to the little ones for whom they are responsible. And in schools, they don't care. They destroy the children. Like they're putting them on pills, or they're giving them Tall and Ritalin. They're saying they have ADHD. They're saying all kinds of stuff. And they're trying to pill them up and trying to say they're stupid. And they're trying to say all kinds of things. There's nothing wrong with them. But they're destroying these children. Effects of cruelty to children. Some time ago, a very striking instance of the calamity which, in certain cases, be brought about by such brutality came prominently before my notice. I had a very great honor of being presented at the initiation of one of our younger members, the initiator on the occasion being the Lord Maitreya himself. In the course of the ceremony, the candidate, as usual, had to reply to many questions dealing largely with the manner in which help can be best given in certain difficult or unusual cases, and a special interrogation was added as to whether he forgave and could help a certain man who had treated him with terrible harshness and cruelty in his early childhood. The initiator made an image of an aura with the most wonderful, delicate little puffs or touch or shoots of lovely color, of light playing over its surface as it were peeping out of it, and then drawing it again and said, "Those are the seeds of the highest and noblest qualities of mankind, fragile, delicate as a gossamer, to be developed only in the atmosphere of the deepest, purest love, without one touch of fear or shrinking. He who, being otherwise ready, can unfold and strengthen them fully, may reach adeptship in the same life. That was the fate he had hoped for you, that, as a great adept, you should have stood beside me when I came to your physical plane. But those of whom I entrusted you, because they offered you to my service even before birth." And this is where you, when you birth children in, you made a contract to honor them and protect them. And this world is not about protecting children in any way. Because they offered you to my service even before birth, allowed you to fall into the hands of this person who was so utterly unworthy of such trust. This was your aura before the blight of the wickedness fell upon you. Now see what his cruel made you. Then the aura changed and twisted about horribly, and when it was still again, all the beautiful life, little shoots had disappeared, and in their place were innumerable little scars. And the Lord explained that the harm done could not be concealed in the present life, and said, "You will still help me when I come, and I hope that in this life you will attain at hardship, ARHATSHIP. But for the final consummation, we must wait a while. In our eyes, there is no more greater crime, thus to check the progress of a soul." I'll do that one again. In our eyes, there is no greater crime than thus to check the progress of a soul. And this is where people could really look at my energetic fields. You're going to see lots and lots and lots of scars, like what that preacher tried to do to me in the residential school. And I knew if I stayed in there, I wouldn't survive. That's why I chose to run away. And I would rather live, freeze, and starve and die on the streets at 9 years old than stay in that building with that psychopath. And that affected me throughout my whole life. And I had to undo that and I had to forgive. Because I hated that guy. Man, I hated him. And even when he died, I hated him. I had so much hate towards him. And it took me a long time to forgive. A long time to undo that hate and that bitterness. Okay, cruelty to children was where I was at. Allowed you to fall into the hands of this person who was so utterly unworthy of such a trust. This was your aura before the blight of his wickedness fell upon you. So a child is born of pure as snow. And when they've been abused and harmed really bad in the universe, they can see all the bad things. And when people have been traumatized in that, like I say, it's in the energies and the universe sees it all. This is your aura before the blight of the wickedness fell upon you. Now see what this cruelty made of you. Then the aura changed, twisted about horribly, and when it was still again, all the beautiful little shoots had disappeared. And in their place were innumerable little scars, and the Lord explained that the harm done could not be cancelled in the present life, and said, "You will still help me when I come, and I hope that in this life you will attain at hardship. But for final consummation, we must wait a while. In our eyes, there is no greater crime than thus to check the progress of a soul." So that's where people got to be really careful with these children that are born. Don't let doctors put them on medication. Don't say they're ADHD. Don't say they're stupid. Don't say they're this and that. There's nothing wrong with them. If they got dyslexia, they got all they label them. There's nothing wrong with any of them. Like Marine Diaz is really, really intelligent child. And it's like nurturing them more and more and more, preparing them for the future to become everything they're supposed to be. And like I say, there's all these stupid labels and things that they try to say is shame. Book is called The Masters and the Path. So I'm going to carry on. So the aura changed and twisted about horribly. So I read all of that. As the candidate saw this aura wither and harden, saw all its fair promise ruthlessly destroyed by the brutality of this man, he felt again for a moment what he had to a great extent forgotten: the agony of the small boy sent away from home, the very hovering fear and the shrinking and the incrediblest horror, the feeling of flaming outrage from which there is no escape or readdress, the sickening sense of utter helplessness in the grasp of a cruel tyrant, the passion resentment at his wicked injustice, with no hope, no foothold anywhere in the abyss, no God to whom to appeal. And seeing this in his mind, I who watched understood something of the terrible tragedy of childhood and why its effects are so far-reaching. And that's where lots of natives, when they were taken from their parents and put in these residential schools, they were destroyed, and it was intentional. And when my granddad, he protected me. But when I was put in residential school, like they wanted to obliterate and harm me in any kind of way possible. And this book is, like I say, it's important to understand. These children are really intelligent. You can't mess with them. It is not only when approaching adeptship that this most loathsome sin of cruelty to children checks progress. All the new all the new and higher qualities which the Aryan race should now be unfolding shows themselves in light and delicate bud of a familiar nature, though at a lower level than those described above. In thousands of cases, these are ruthlessly crushed out by the insensate ferocity of parents or teachers, or repressed by the brutal bullying of bigger boys at a boarding school. And thus many good people remain at the same level through several incarnations. And it's hard to work out this bitterness, this hate. Like the challenges in my life every day to get up every day and pray good things and try to help people. And over and over and over, I pray for the world. And they all replied that they would try. Then the master gave some valuable personal advice to each in turn and asked each one separately, "Will you try to work in the world under my guidance?" And each said, "I will." He then drew the first boy in front of him and placed both his hands upon his head. The boy once more sinking to his knees, the master said, "Then I take you as my pupil on probation, and I hope that you will soon come into closer relationships with me, and therefore I give you my blessings in order that you may pass it on to others." Like a lot of children are saying they came from heaven, and they can tell. Some of them will say, "Oh yeah, God sent me to you," or "I chose you to be born," and they'll talk about this higher plane of existence. These children today are beautiful. And man, oh man, they need to be listened to, and they needed to be protected, and they need to be taught and helped in the right ways. Very cool, Jay Sunday 24. Like I say, your children are your teachers. As he spoke, the boy's aura increased wonderfully in size, the color of love and benevolent glow with living fire, and he said, "Oh, master, make me really good. Make me fit to serve you." But the master smilingly replied, "Only you yourself can do that, my dear boy, but my help and blessings will be ever with you." And that's why I say it's always your choice, your belief. I don't care. You wanna follow old dogma, pray to old gods, and practice all kinds of foolish old things. Go ahead, but treat the children right. Don't treat them bad. Don't say they're dumb or there's this. Don't put them on pills and harm them or do anything. Then he took the others and he went through the same little ceremony with each of them, and their auras also increased and grew firmer and steadier as they glowed responsively in the most marvelous manner. Then the master rose and drew the boys with him, saying, "Now come with me and see what I do." We all trooped together down the sloping path to the bridge across the river. He took us into his cave and showed the boys the living image of all the probationary pupils. Then he said, "Now I am going to make images of you." And he materialized them before his eyes, and they were naturally tremendously interested. One of them said, in an odd voice, "Am I like that?" In one of the images there was a patch of reddish matter, and the master said to the original with a a humorous glance, "What is that?" "I don't know," replied the boy. "I think," he guessed, for it was the result of an emotional strain the night before. The master pointed out various colors and uh, arrangements in the aura and told them that they meant that which he wanted to alter. He told them that he should look at these images each day to see how they were getting on, and he hoped that they would so arrange them that they would be pleasant to look upon. He then gave them his final blessings. In the case of elder people put upon probation, they are left to a large extent to find the most suitable work for themselves. But with the younger people, he sometimes quite definitely puts a piece of work in the way of one of them and watches to see how he does it. He condescends sometimes to give special messages of encouragement and instruction to individuals among these young people, and even to give advice as to their training for the guidance of their young people who desire to follow along the same path. Extracts from some of those messages are given here. And never worry about negativity. It's like, okay, it gives you an opportunity to see, because the darkness wants everybody to be afraid. And with me, like I say, my granddad did everything to protect me. And all the things he taught me, and I followed my path, and I've been following it on my own. And I've never forgotten the things he taught me and showed me. And I live by the things, and like I say, lots of things tried to destroy me. I mean, it's even when I got hit with a dump truck. I wasn't in the wrong, but my lawyer sold me out. and I ended up losing. And same with the residential school. The lawyer sold me out, and I ended up not getting what I was supposed to. But I'm moving on. I'm creating. I'm looking to the future. And I will be in the fifth dimension. I'll do everything to get there. I'm doing everything with knowledge books and that, and trying to make people conscious and aware. So I'm going to carry on with this book, Advice from the Masters. I know that your one object in life is to serve the brotherhood, but yet not forget that there are higher steps before you, and that progress on the path means sleepless vigilance. You must not only be always ready to serve, you must be very watching for opportunities, nay, making opportunities to be helpful in small things in order that when the greater work comes, you may not fail to see it. Never for a moment forget your occult relationships. It should be an ever-present inspiration to you, not only a shield from the fatuous thoughts which float around us, but the constant stimulus of spiritual activity. The vacuity and the pettiness of the ordinary life should be impossible for us, though not beyond our comprehension and compassion. The ineffable bliss of the adept is not yet yours, but remember that you are already one of those who live that higher life. You are a dispenser of their sunlight in the lower world, so you too, at your level, must be radiant sun of love and joy, and the world may be unappreciative, uncomprehending, but your duty is to shine, and that's where I say shine your light. Wherever you go, stop hiding it. Everywhere you go, even when you drive down the road, like this energy that's coming off you does all kinds of things and people need it. But people don't want to open up their heart. They don't want to do anything. All they want to do is take and do stuff. And they're not trying to serve the universe in a higher way. Do not rest on your oars. There are still higher peaks to conquer. The need of intellectual development must not be forgotten. We must unfold within ourselves sympathy, affection, tolerance. Each must realize there are other points of view than his own, and that they may be just as worthy of attention. All coarseness and roughness of speech, all tendency to argumentativeness must absolutely disappear. One who is prone to it should check himself when the impulse towards it raises. He should say little, and that always with delicacy and courtesy. Never speak without first thinking whether what you are going to say is both kind and sensible. Who tries to develop love within himself will be saved from many mistakes. Love is a supreme virtue of all, without which all other quality qualifies water and the sand. Thoughts of feelings of the undesirable kind must be rigorously excluded. You must work at them until they are impossible to you. Touches of irritability ruffle the calm seas of the consciousness of the brotherhood. Pride must be eliminated. Most people have pride. And that pride sometimes just keeps you really, really stuck. And my granddad told me the hardest thing for me would be my pride. And he says my pride would bring me a lot of hardships and things. And he was right. It took me a long, long time to understand what he was telling me as a child. It took me until I was way into my 40s before I figured that out. But people have this pride and these egocentric things, and like I say, they think they're superior or something. But whatever. Pride must be eliminated, for it is a serious bar to progress. Exquisite delicacy of thought and speech is needed. A rare aroma of perfect tact which can never jar or offend. That is hard to win, yet you may reach it if you will. Definite service and not mere amusement should be in your aim. Think not what you want to do, but what you can do that will help someone else. Forget about yourself and consider others. A pupil must be constantly kind, obligating, helpful, not now and then, but all the time. Remember, all the time which is not spent in service or fitting yourself for service is for us lost time. When you see certain evils in yourself, take them in hand manfully, meaningfully, and effectively. Preserve. You will succeed. It is a question of willpower. Watch for opportunities and hints. Be efficient. I am always ready to help you, but I cannot do the work for you. The effort you must the effort must come from your side. Try deeply, try deep in yourself all around and to live a life of utter devotion and service. And this is where we have to do it. Everybody thinks Jesus is just going to blink or the aliens are going to come and just transform us all. It doesn't work that way. You have done well, and I want you to do better yet. I have tested you by giving you opportunities to help, and so far you have taken them nobly. I shall therefore give you more and greater opportunities, and your progress will depend upon your recognizing them and availing yourself to them. Remember, the rewards of success work in always the opening out before you of more work, and the faithfulness in what seems to you small things lead to employment in matters of greater importance. I hope that you will soon draw closer to me, and in so doing, will help your brothers along the path which lead to the feet of the King. Be thankful that you have the great power of love, that you know how to flood your world with sunlight, to pour yourself out with royalty, uh, prodig, prodigality, prodigality, no, prodigality, to scatter largesse like a king, or to scatter lagresse. So he's using ancient words here. I mean, words you don't really hear anymore in like this is English. To scatter lagresse like a king, Largess like a king. That indeed is well, but take care lest in the hearts of the great flower of love there should be a tiny touch of pride, which might spread as does an almost invisible spot of decay until it is tainted and corrupted the whole blossom. Remember that our great brother has written, be humble if thou wouldst attain the wisdom. Be humbler still when the wisdom thou hast mastered. Cultivate the modest fragrant plant, humility. Cultivate the modest fragrant plant, humility, until its sweet aroma permeates every fiber of your being. When you try for unity is not enough to draw the others into yourself, to unfold them with your aura, to make them one with you. To do that is to already a long step, but you must go yet further, make yourself one with each of them. You must enter into the very heart of your brother and understand them, never from curiosity. And that's where people want to look in everybody. And you can't open up people's auras and chakras and look around in them unless you're getting permission. I don't try to look into people unless I'm asked to. And then I always try to use their angels and guides to do it. That way I'm not violating anything. Understand them never from curiosity, for a brother's heart is both a secret and a sacred place. That's why they say the chakras are the holy of holies. They're your past, your present, and your future, and people shouldn't be digging around in them. One must not seek to pry into it or discuss it, but rather endeavor reverently to comprehend, to synthesize, to help. It is easy to criticize others from one's point of view. It is more difficult to get to know them and love them. But that is the only way to bring them along with you. I want you to grow quickly, that I may use in the great works. To help you in that, I give you my blessing. And this is where these teachers and guides, they always check on you. And when I get violated and I call them, right away they look at who's doing things to me. And I'm like, people like to do this. And people like, but you see everything. It's their, when I'm around people, they have angels and guides and that show me things. And I just tell people, I don't go intentionally looking in them. I don't care what their futures are. I don't care what their business. I don't care what their success is. I don't care where they're going to live or anything. If they've given me permission and the spirits want, I will channel things. what I am being shown. It's not mine, it doesn't belong to me. And I don't always have to make people pay for things. Sometimes I give people things intentionally and I help them. And when I clear people, I bring in energy after I get rid of the bad stuff. I let this new stuff come in and I allow it to bring change. I don't pretend to be God. I don't pretend to be Harry Potter waving around a wand magically. I don't pretend to be sprinkling stardust and stuff all over doing silly stuff. I'm very truthful about what I do. Daughter, you have done well in exercising your influence to civilize as far as may be the rougher elements around you and to help another pure soul upon her way to me. That will be a very bright star in your crown of glory. Continue your help to her and see whether there not be other stars which you can presently add to the crown. This good work of yours has enabled you to draw you closer to me far earlier than would otherwise have been the case. There is no more certain methods of rapid progress than to devote oneself to helping others upon the upward path. You have been fortunate to in meeting a comrade from of old, for two who can really work together are more efficient than if they are putting forth the same amount of strength separately. And this is where God's trying to bring people together. Because when you come together doing everything right, it changes. It does lots. And everybody's trying to do it separately. Oh, I'm so powerful. Oh, I am so this. You have begun well. Continue to move along the same lines with swiftness and certainty. I, I welcome you, the latest recruits, to our glorious band. It is not easy for you to forget yourself entirely, to yield yourself without reservation to the service of the world. Yet that is what is required of us, that we should live only to be a blessing to others and to do the work which is given to us to do. You have made a good beginning in the process of self-development, but yet remains, but much yet remains to be done. Repress even the slightest shade of irritability and be ready always to receive advice and instruction. Cultivate humility and self sacrifice and fill yourself with a fervent enthusiasm for service. So shall you be a fitting instrument in the hands of the great master, a soldier in the army of those who save the world. To help you in that, I now take you into the probationary pupil. I am pleased with you, but I want you to do more, for you, my child, you have the capacity to make rapid progress, and I want you to set this before yourself as an object which you are determined at all costs to achieve. Some of the obstacles which you are instructed to overcome may seem to you unimportant, but in reality they are not so, because they are the surface indications of an interior condition which must be altered if you wish to be of use to our Lord when it comes. That means a radical change which it will not be easy for you to make, but the effort is well worth it for a while. The rules which I wish you to make for yourself are these. Number one, forget yourself and desire your own personality, and remember only the service of others, devoting your strength, your thoughts, and your enthusiasm wholly to that. Two, do not offer an opinion on any matter unless directly asked for it. Three, before speaking, always consider how what you say will affect others. Four, never betray or comment upon a brother's weakness. Five, remember that you have yet much to learn and therefore may often be in error, so speak with becoming modesty. Six, when called, move at once, not waiting to finish what you happen to be reading or doing. If you are performing a duty of importance, explain very gently what it is. I wish to draw you closer to me. If you will keep these rules, I shall soon be able to do so. Meantime, my blessings rest upon you. And then it says, become as little children. Many who read these instructions may be surprised by their extreme simplicity. They may even despise them as being little suited to guide and help people in the immense complexity of the modern civilization. But he who thinks thus forgets that it is of the essence of life of the pupil, and that he shall lay aside all this complexity, that he shall, as a master put it, come out of your world into ours. So that's where you got to go more into this spiritual way of being. And my granddad used to say, you like being there way too much. You need to learn to be here. And come into the world of thought in which life is simple and one-pointed, in which right and wrong is once more clearly defined, in which the issue before us are straight and intelligible. It is a simple life that the disciple should be living. It is the very simplicity which he attains, which makes the higher progress possible for him. We have made our life an entanglement and an uncertainty, a massive confusion, a storm cross current, in which the weak fail and sink, but the pupil of the master must be strong and sane. He must take his life in his own hands and make it simple with divine simplicity. His mind must brush aside all these man-made confusions and delusions and go straight as an arrow to its mark. Except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven, remember, is the great white brotherhood of the adepts. And then it says again, the hidden side of Christian festivals. There's a book there, and on page there talks about this. We see some from these extracts how high is the ideal of the master sets before his pupil. Perhaps it may seem to some of them to be what in theology we call the counsel of perfection. That is to say, a goal or a condition impossible to reach perfectly as yet, but still one at which we must constantly aim. But all aspirants are aiming high, and not yet can fully reach that at which he aims otherwise. He would not need to be in the physical incarnation at all. We are very far from being perfect, but among the people whom you can be brought close to, the greatest ones have the most wonderful opportunities just because of their youth and plasticity. It is much easier for them to eliminate those things which are not quite what they should be, and than it is for the older people. If they can cultivate the habit of taking the right point of view and acting for the right reasons, of being in the right attitude the whole of their lives, they will steadily draw nearer and nearer to the ideals of the master. If the pupils who have been put on probation could see while awake in the physical body the living image of the master makes, he would understand much more fully the importance of what may seem to be but a mere detail. Thanks for joining us, Mish. You have a good day. So the effects of irritability. So like I say, when people are irritated and you go around them, you can feel it. For me, it's really, really hard. And like I say, I have to try to adjust my energy around people all the time when I do things, because everybody has an agenda. And agendas a lot of times create irritability because everybody wants things their way, or they use their mind to create something negative so they can stay irritated and irritable all the time. And they're always using their mind. Oh, this is going to happen. Oh, that's going to happen. And they sit there and they wait, and then the universe makes it happen. And then they're irritated and they're mad, and they're irritated and mad. Then they think more worse things, and then more things happen, and they stay irritated and mad, and they keep creating miserable experiences. They don't know how to change their mind. They're just stuck in a loop and they stay there. Really hard to try to help people to shift out of things. Irritability is a common difficulty, as I have already explained. To be irritable is a thing which is likely enough to happen to someone living in this present civilization where people are always very highly strung. We live to a large extent in the civilization of torturing noise, and above all things, noise jars and nerves and causes irritation. The experience of going down into the city and returning home feel quite shattered and tired as common ones for sensitive people. Many other things are contributory, but principally the awareness is due to the constant noise and the pressure of so many astral bodies vibrating at different rates, and all excited and disturbed by trifles. It makes it very difficult to avoid irre- irascribably, especially to the people whose bodies are more highly strung and sensitive than those of the ordinary man. Of course, this petulance is somewhat superficial. It does not penetrate deeply, but it is better to avoid even a superficial peevishness as far as possible, because its effects last so much longer than we usually realize. If there is a heavy storm, it is the wind that first stirs the waves, but the waves will continue to swell long after the wind has died down. That is the effects produced on water, which is comparatively heavy, but the matter of the astral body is far finer than water. The vibrations set going penetrate much more deeply and therefore produce a more lasting effect. Some slight unpleasant temporary feelings which pass out of the mind in 10 minutes perhaps may yet produce an effect on the astral body lasting for 48 hours. The vibrations do not settle down again for a considerable period of time. And we were trained by our families, if we're here black sheep, we were trained, they attacked us over and over and over, keeping us irritated. And when they do that, that energy stays stuck in our astral plane for days and days, and other people pick up on it, and then they do the same thing. And they keep you stuck in this loop in all these ways, and these irritable vibrations are there, and it takes a long time to cleanse. And that's why people need to find practices of cleaning their own energy. But people are freaking lazy. You can teach and show them all kinds of things, and they just don't do it. You can put a prayer in front of them, and they won't do it. You can put smudge, you can put anything in front of people, and they won't do it. And then they just sit there and sit there and sit there waiting for somebody to do it for them. That is the effect produced on water, which is comparatively heavy, but the matter of the astral body is far finer than water, and the vibrations set going penetrate much more deeply, therefore produces more lasting effects. Some slight unpleasant temporary feeling which passes out of the mind in 10 minutes perhaps may yet produce an effect on the astral body lasting for 48 hours. The vibrations do not settle down again for a considerable period of time. And that's where energies really, really do all kinds of stuff. Very cool, J. Sunday 22. When such a fault as this is known, it can almost effectually be removed, not by focusing attention upon it, but by endeavoring to develop the opposite virtue. One way of dealing with it is to set one's thoughts steadily against that, but there is no doubt that this course of action arouses opposition in the mental and astral element, so that often a better method is to try to develop considerations for others, based, of course, fundamentally on one's love towards them. A man who is full of love and consideration will not allow himself to speak or even think irritable words towards them. If the man can be filled with that idea, the same result will be attained without exciting opposition from the elements. Selfishness, or sorry, yeah, selfishness. There are many other forms of selfishness that can delay the pupil's progress very seriously. Laziness is one of these. I have seen a person enjoying himself very much with a book who did not like to leave it in order to be punctual. Another perhaps writes very badly, careless of inconvenience and the damage to eyes and temper of those who have to read his calligraphy. Little, little negligences tend to make one less sensitive to high influences, to make life untidy and ugly for others, and to destroy self control and efficiency. Efficiency and punctuality are essential. If satisfactory work is to be done, many people are inefficient. When a piece of work is given to them, they do not finish it thoroughly, but make all kinds of excuses, or when they are asked for some information, they do not know how to find it. People differ much in this respect. We may ask a question of someone and he will answer, I do not know, but another will say, well, I don't know, but I will go and find out, and he returns with the required information. In the same way, one person goes to do a thing and come back and says that he could not do it, but another holds on until it is done. And that's lots of people are that way. I gave a really, really good spiritual book to this person. He wanted it. He says, oh, there's something in there I need. I got to read it. So I'm like, okay, here. When you're done, return it. 3 months went by and I says, so have you read that book yet? He says, no, it's been sitting on my desk. And I just absorbed all the knowledge. And then he gave it back to me and I'm like, you didn't read it. You didn't absorb the knowledge. Because he said what he did is he just went like this, closed his eyes, and all that knowledge was in him. And he was trying to tell me this. And what he did is he read the book and he read a couple of pages and it told him all these universal things. And he didn't like what it told him. And he thought by reading it, it was going to give him power. And it made him angry because there's things he has to heal. So he placed it there and then he says, oh yeah, on this one page, he says that's all I needed to absorb. And I'm like, that's crap. And I made him aware of Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet. And what he would do is put a book under his head, fall asleep, and he would absorb all the knowledge. Or he'd put books under his bed and he would absorb all the knowledge. And this person became aware of that. And then all of a sudden he's absorbing all these things. And I'm like, people are silly. Me, I don't care how long a book will take. When I read Urantia, I spent months reading that book. When I read the Keys of Enoch, I read it over and over and over. I read it more than 9 times. And there's many, many books I will go back and reread them because they take me deep in to really spiritual places. And I carry those things inside my mind to try to figure them out. And I find the answers. And people just want answers. They don't want to do the work. Well, I don't know, but I will go and find out. The other returns with the required information. In the same way, one person goes to do a thing and comes back and says he could not do it, but another holds on until it is done. Yet in all good work, the pupil must always think of the benefits that will result to others and of the opportunity to serve in these matters, which even when they are small materially, are great in spiritual value. Not of the good karma resulting to himself, which would only another and very subtle form of self-centeredness. And that's what people try to do. They're very self-centered. Remember how the Christ put it, inasmuch as ye done unto the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Other subtle effects of some kinds are to be seen in depression and jealousy and aggressive assertion of one's rights. And this is where people will violate people. They'll push all kinds of things on them. They'll do all kinds of stuff. They'll try to manipulate you. They'll try to find a way to get you to do things. So other subtle effects of the same kind are to be seen in depression, jealousy, and aggressive assertion of one's rights. An adept said, think less about your rights and more about your duties. There are some occasions in dealing with the outside world when the pupil might find it necessary gentle to state that he needs, but almost his fellow pupil there are no such things as rights, but only opportunities. If a man feels annoyed, he begins to project from himself aggressive feelings. He may not go so far as to actual hatred, but he is creating a dull glow in his astral body and affecting the mental body as well. And people love doing this nowadays. There's people that show up in meditations and everything. I told a story where I went to a moon ceremony at this Chinese woman. She says, "You have to come to my ceremony." I'm like, okay then. So on the day of the moon ceremony, I went there early. She said, "Show up early." And I'm like, okay, I got there. And she gives me like $100. I'm like, for what? And she's like, go to the store, buy lots of food. I'm like, well, what do you want me to buy? She's like, I don't know. You have to feed your ancestors. I'm like, what? She says, yeah, just spend the whole thing on food. So I bought 5 chickens and all kinds of stuff. I brought fruit. I bought all kinds of stuff. And I brought it back to her place. And all that food was for the spirits. And while I was sitting there, I looked at her. I says, there's this guy going to come when we're meditating, and he's going to try to affect everybody. He's going to send a really bad energy while everybody's deep in meditation. And I says, you know who this person is? And he's going to wait. He's outside in his car or something. And when the energy is generating, he's going to come in and he's going to send this really bad energy. And in the ceremony, she made me sit up front. She made me put on this uh, robe, and I sat next to her, and it was her place in her temple, and I was sitting there. And she says, you have to be a part of this. There's things you have to do, and you're being asked. So I'm like, okay. And I sat there, and all her students and all these people were in shock because none of them knew who I was. And here she was putting me there and everything. And nobody touches the altar. And she was getting me to do things on the altar and that. And they're just like, oh man, you never touch anything. And I was moving things around and doing stuff, and they're just staring at me. Then we did the teachings, and then we started the focus, and then we started praying, and then we did the chant, and we went into the meditation. And about 3 minutes into the meditation, you can hear the door knob open, and then the door slowly squeaked open and closed. And the guy creeped in, and he made this weird sound, and he sent this real bad energy, and everything just, the energy and everything just dropped. And that woman took her singing bowl and she started going like this, and she was focused on her altar going like this, and she turned around like a wand, and she went, and this energy went at the guy, and he just got up and he just left. And afterwards, I talked to her about it, and I'm like, you can't allow this guy in your ceremonies anymore. He's harming you and he's harming everybody. And this is where I used to have meditations in Penticton, Kelowna, and that. And there were people coming doing really bad things, and they were harming me and trying to harm other people, and they were intentionally doing it. So this next one is worry. Similar disturbances are frequently produced in the mental body and are equally disastrous in their efforts. If a man allows himself to be greatly worried over some problem and turns it over and over again in his mind without reaching any conclusion, he has thereby caused something like a storm in his mental body. Owing to the exceeding finesse of the vibrations of this level, the word storm only partially expresses the reality. We should in some way come near to the effect produced if we thought of it as a sore place in the mental body, as an irritation produced by friction. We sometimes encounter argumentative people, people who must argue about everything, and apparently love the exercise so much that they scarcely care on which side of the problem they are engaged. And I bump into people who want to argue with me all the time. Never stop, no matter what. We sometimes encounter argumentative people, people who must argue about everything and apparently love the exercise so much that they scarcely care on which side of the problem they engage. A person of that sort has his mental body in a condition of perpetual inflammation, and the inflammation is liable on very slight provocations to break out at any moment into an actual open sore. For such a one there is no hope of any kind of occult progress until he has brought his balance and common sense to bear on this diseased condition. And people have to stop worrying, but they don't want to. And they got to stop arguing. He says this energy will cause you sores and make you sick. And you'll see people, I don't care how spiritual they are, if they're that way and they just want to go around constantly finding people to argue with and constantly worry, you're going to find all kinds of problems. And all they do is generate that around everywhere. And they just keep everything stuck in this energy. Unfortunately for us, a good emotion persists even larger than the evil because they work in the finer part of the astral body. The effects of the feelings of strong love or devotion remains in the astral body long after the occasion that caused it has been forgotten. It is possible, though unusual, to have two sets of vibrations going on strongly in the astral body at the same time. For example, love and anger. At the moment of feeling intense anger, a man would not only likely to have any strong affection feelings unless the anger were noble indications. In that case, the after results would go on side by side, but one at a much higher level than the other, and therefore persisting longer. Next one is laughter. It is very natural for boys and girls to wish to enjoy themselves, to be merry, and to read and to hear amusing things, and to laugh at them. That is quite right, and does not harm. If people could see the vibrations set up by jovial, kindly laughter, they would realize at once that while the astral body is disturbed to some extent, it is the same thing as shaking up the liver in riding. It actually does good, not harm. But if the results of some of the less pleasant stories that foul human minds are in the habit of telling were visible to them, they would realize the ghastly difference. So thoughts are altogether evil, and the forms produced by them remain clinging for a long time to the astral body, attracts all kinds of loathsome entities. Those approaching the master must be utterly free from the coarseness as well as from all that is blusterous and rough, and the younger must constantly be on their guard against any relapse into childishness or silliness. There is sometimes a tendency towards inane giggling, which must be avoided at all costs, as it has a very bad effect on the astral body. It weaves around a web of gray brown thread, very unpleasant to look upon, which forms a layer which hinders the entrance of good influences. It is a danger against which young people should seditiously guard themselves. Be as happy and as joyous as you can. The Master likes to see it. It will help you in your path. But never for the moment let your joyousness be tingled by any sort of roughness or rudeness. Never let your laughter become a boisterous, a guffaw. Never let it, on the other hand, degenerate into silly giggle. There's a definite line of demarcation in this, as in other matters, between what is harmless and what may easily become harmful. The most certain method of determining it is to consider whether the amusement passes beyond the point of delicacy and good taste. The moment that the laughter oversteps these, the moment that there is in it the least touch of boisterousness, the moment that it ceases to be perfect in its refinement, we are passing on to dangerous ground. The inner side of that distinction is that so long as the ego is fully in control of the astral body, all is well. As soon as he loses control, the laughter becomes vicious and meaningless. The horse is, as it were, running away with the rider. The astral body, thus left unchecked, is at the mercy of any passing influence, and may easily be affected by the most undesirable thoughts and feelings. So to it also that your mirth is ever pure and clean, never tinged for a moment with the malicious delight of suffering or discomfort of another. If a mortifying accident should happen to someone, do not stand there laughing idly at the ridiculous side of the incident, but rush forwards at once to help and console. Loving kindness and helpfulness must be always your most prominent characteristic. Next one will be idle words, then forms made by speech, then fuss, values of association, then we're done this chapter. I didn't want to go past 12, but I'm going to. I'm going to finish this chapter. So this is giving a lot deeper understandings to things. I hope it's really helping you all. I'd like to stop and pay attention to what you people are writing and sharing and that, but these things are really, really important to understand. If you want to be spiritual, you have to look at it. You got to look at your bullshit with worry. You got to look at your bullshit with arguing. You got to look at your bullshit with a lot of things. And you got to see how you affected yourself and everybody around you and what's happening to your body, to your mind, to your soul, to all kinds of things. Idle words. A clairvoyant who can see the effects upon the higher body of various undesirable emotions finds no difficulty in understanding how important it is that they should be controlled. But because most of us do not see the results, we are liable to forget it and allow ourselves to become careless. The same thing is true of the effects produced by causal or thoughtless remarks. The Christ in his last incarnation on earth is reported to have said that for very idle words that men shall speak, they shall give account on the day of judgment. That sounds a cruel thing to say, and if the orthodox view of judgment were not correct, it would indeed be unjust and abominable. He did not mean in the least that every idle word spoken would condemn a man to eternal torture. There is no such thing as that, but we know that every word and every thought that has its karma is result, and when foolish things are repeated again and again, it makes an atmosphere around the person which does keep out good influences. To avoid this, constant attention is required. It would he a Superman ideal to expect a person never to forget himself for a moment. But disciples are after all trying to become superhuman because the master is beyond man. If the pupil could live the perfect life, he would himself already be an adept. He cannot, he that yet, but if he can constantly remember his ideal, he would approach much nearer to it. Every idle word that he speaks is certainly affecting, for the time, his relation with the master, so let him watch his words with the utmost care. Forms made by speech. This is one that's really important. There's a lot of people don't understand. The pupil should watch the manner of his speech as well as the matter, so that it may be grateful and beautiful, correct, and free from carelessness and exaggeration. His words should be well chosen and well pronounced. Many people think that in his daily life it is not necessary to take the trouble to speak clearly. It matters much more than they think, because we are all time building our own surroundings and these react upon us. We fill our rooms and our houses with our thoughts, then we have to live in them. If, for example, a man allows himself to be overcome by depression, his room becomes charged with that quality, and any sensitive person coming into it becomes conscious of a certain lowering of vitality, a loss of tone. Much more, he himself, who lives in the room much of the time, is perpetually affected by the depression. And this is where I was in Penticton. I went really into some kind of a depression. It wasn't good, and cannot easily throw it off. In some way, a man who surrounds himself with the unpleasant sound forms by careless and uncultured speech produces an atmosphere in which these forms constantly react upon him. Because of his perpetual pressure, the man is likely to produce these unpleasant forms. If he is not careful, he will find himself getting into the habit of speaking roughly and coarsely. I have heard again and again from school teachers, we can do nothing for this child's speech. While we have them here in the school, we try to correct them, but when they go home, they hear the wrong pronunciation of words, and that always persists and makes it impossible for us to counteract it. The children are in school for perhaps 5 hours a day and are in and about the home most of the remaining time. In the home, an atmosphere of undesirable sound forms is presenting on them all the time, so that they are absolutely enslaved by it. There are certain words they actually cannot say, for they cannot utter a pure sound. In some parts of Australia, for example, when they try to say, "Now it is time to go to school," they say something like, "Nah, it is time to go to school." That will not do. You may think that a small thing and unimportant. It is so by no means small, and a number of such things perpetually produce a great effect. It is surely better than we should surround ourselves with the beauty than with ugliness, even though it be in the etheric matter. Yeah, Gerdu Trevino, thanks for putting that there. Very cool, Professor. Glad this is really helping. Like all of these are important to understand. And it's like when you hear people, they try to talk ghetto talk and they think it's really, really cool. It's like even the raps, these are important to understand. And it's like when you hear people, they try to talk ghetto talk and they think it's really, really cool. It's like even the raps, these are important to understand. And it's like when you hear people, they try to talk ghetto talk and they think it's really, really cool. It's like even the raps for all those things react upon one another. So when you're doing this, it just keeps keeping people in lower stuff. And like me, I can't stand rap. There's things I just, and people think it's so cool. One guy thinks he's a master and wants to rap and do this and do that. And I'm like, and he tries to do it. He's like, he gets stoned and then he starts all of this and he thinks it's really cool. I'm like, you're in so low energy. It's going to be thousands of years before you wake up and realize and get yourself out of it. Each word as it is uttered makes a little form in the etheric matter, just as a thought does in mental matter. Some of these forms are most objectable. The word hate, for instance, produces a horrible form, so much so that having seen its shape, I never use the word. We may say that we dislike the thing or that we do not care about it, but we should never use the word hate more than we can help, for merely to see the form that it makes gives a feeling of acute discomfort. There are words, on the other hand, which produce beautiful forms, words which it is well to recite. All this might be worked out scientifically and will be someday. I have no doubt when people have time to do it. It may be said, however, in general, that the words which are connected with desirable qualities produce pleasant forms, and those which are associated with evil qualities produce ugly forms. Such word forms are not determined by the thought which accompany the word. The thought built its own form in a higher type of matter. For example, the word hate is often used quite casually without any real hatred at all. When speaking, perhaps, in some article of food, it is perfectly unnecessary use of words, and that's where you shouldn't let little children say, "Oh, I hate my food." And the more they say that, these negative energies go in their food, and when they eat it, it makes them really, really sick. It harms them. Even adults. Anything that you're offered or given, you're supposed to love it. You're not supposed to go, "Oh, I hate this." You're not supposed to think that because that goes in your food. And all those negative entities and that, you suck it down into you and it harms you. And some kids were growing up and all you ever hear them saying is, "Oh, I hate this. Oh, I hate broccoli. Oh, I hate that." Every time their parents give them food, they say hate. And then later they get to teenager years and they're really sick because their body can't, it just is negative. You're supposed to put love into your food. Anything you touch, eat, and drink should be with love. That is a perfectly unnecessary use of the word, and it is obviously does not convey any serious emotion. So the astral hate form is not produced, but the ugly etheric sound form appears just as though the speaker really meant it. So clearly, the word itself is not a good word, and it's like if you hate certain clothes and you wear them, you're going to be wearing a very negative energy. Why are you wearing it? You should be wearing clothes that make you feel really good, happy, loving, joy, all kinds of things. That's why I'm trying to use these flame, different colors for the week to allow that change. Some people don't want that. Some people never want to heal and change nothing. But the ugly etheric sound form appears just as though the speaker really meant it. So clearly, the word itself is not a good word. The same is true of the oaths and obscene words so often used amongst uneducated, uncultured people. The forms produced by some of these are a particularly horrible nature when seen by clairvoyant sight. But it is unthinkable that anyone aspiring to be a disciple would pollute his lips with these. We often hear people using all sorts of loose slang phrases which in reality have no meaning or legitimate derivations. It is important that all these should be avoided by the student of occultism. And this is where you got to become aware. The same thing is true with regard to the habit of exaggeration, and people love exaggeration. People sometimes talk in the utmost exaggerant way. If a thing is 100 yard distance, they say it is miles off. If a day comes that it is hotter than usual, they say it is boiling, or command of English is poor. If we are not able to find words to express different uh, gradations of thought without plunging into the wild, meaningless superlative. Worst of all, if they wish to convey the idea that something is especially good, they describe it as awfully good, which is not only a contradiction of the earth, because awful and good, and if it's awfully good, not cool, and therefore an utter silly and meaningless expression. But it is also a shocking misuse of words which has a solemn connotation of its own, which renders its employment in such a sense of grotesquely inappropriate. All such abomination should be strictly avoided by one who aspires to become a student of occultism. So, if you want to be really spiritual, you got to understand these things. We emphasize control of speech from the point of view of regulating the meanings of our words, but quite rightly, nothing is more necessary. I wish we could call all control and pronunciations of words and regard that also as an act of self training. The importance of accuracy and refinement in speech cannot be exaggerated. Whenever we speak or laugh, we make a color as well as a sound. And it is the right kind of laughter, heartily, kindly. It has a very pleasant effect and spreads a feeling of joyousness all around. But if it should be searing or sarcastic laugh, a coarse cough or snicker or giggle, the result is very different and exceedingly unpleasant. It is remarkable how closely all shades of thought and feelings mirror themselves in other planes. This is very evident when we pass from one country to another and find the air filled with quite different sound effects. If one crosses the channel from England to France, one sees at once that the sound forms made by French language are quite different from that produced by the English. It is especially noticeable with regard to certain sounds because every language has some sound particular to itself, and it is thus which are the principal features which distinguish the appearance of one's language from that of another. And that's why there's some words like in my language, when you say chi, it means mosquito. But when you say chi, um, in the Oriental practice, is the life force energy. And then you could find it in other things. So for me, when somebody says chi, I think of a mosquito. And an Oriental will think of your life force. So there's a big difference in that. The color of the form produced depends more upon the spirit in which we speak. Two people may speak at the same word and so make broadly the same form, but the form may have different spirits behind them. When you are parting with someone, you say goodbye. Those words may be accompanied by a real outrush of friendly feelings, but if you say goodbye in a causal tone without any special thought or feeling behind it, that produces a totally different effect on the higher plane. One is just a flash in the pan, meaning little, doing little. The other is a definite outpouring which you give to your friend. It is well to remember the expression means God be with you. Therefore, it is a blessing which you are giving. In France, we say adieu. To God I commend you. So when you say adieu, means to God I commend you. If you would think of the meaning of such words whenever you say them, you would do much more good than you do. For then your will and your thought would go with the word, and the blessing would be a real help and not a mere causal flicker. In all these ways, the disciple's speech should be refined and evolved. Remember how it is said in the Light of Asia that the King, the Self, is within you, and whatever comes out of your mouth in his presence should be a golden thought expressed in golden words. Then it says, govern the lips as they were palace doors and kings within, tranquil and unfair, the courteous be all words which from that presence wins. Oh, so I'll start that over again. I said that word wrong. Govern the lips as they are palace doors, the king within. Tranquil and fair and courteous be the words which form that presence win. Pretty cool. Fuss. Especially is it necessary for the aspirant to avoid all fidgetiness or fussiness. Many an energetic and earnest worker spoils most of his efforts and make them of no effect by yielding to these feelings or to these failings, for he sets up around him such an aura of tumultuous vibration that no thought or feeling can pass in or out without distortions. And the very good that he sends out takes with it a shiver that, or yeah, shiver that particular neutralizes it. Be be absolutely accurate, but attain your accuracy by perfect calmness, never by hurry or fuss. Another point that is necessary to impress upon the student is that in occultism we always mean exactly what we say, neither more or less. When a rule is laid down that nothing unkind or critical must be said about another, just that is exactly what is meant. Not that when we happen to think of it, we should slightly diminish the number of unkind or critical things that we say every day. But that may must definitely altogether cease. Should be most, but it's spelled must. But that they must definitely altogether cease. We are so much in the habit of hearing various ethical instructions which no one seems to endeavor to put seriously into practice, that we have the habit of thinking that a perfunctory asset to an idea or an occasional feeble effort to approximate to it is all that religion requires of us. And that's where people that go to church and they'll do everything Sunday, they'll do confession and everything, but it's all just crap. And then they go right back to being drunk and doing everything and that. And they think they're going to go into the universe and they never change. They only go to church to fool themselves that the Pope is saving them and they're going to heaven because they don't want to change. They want to drink wine. They want to keep on doing the same stupid things. We must put aside that frame of mind altogether and understand the exact and literal obedience is required when occult instruction is given, whether by the master or by his pupil. Next, a value of association. So this one is a big one also, and people don't want to look at it sometimes. Value of association. Very much help in all of these matters is often given to the aspirant, both probationary and accepted, by the presence of an older pupil of the master. In the early days in India, when a guru selected a chela, he formed them into a group and took them about with him wherever he went. Now and then he taught them, but often they received no instruction. Yet they made rapid progress, because all the time they were within the aura of the teacher and were being brought into harmony with it, instead of being surrounded by ordinary influences. The teacher also assisted them in building of character and always watched the trios carefully. Our master cannot adopt that plan physically, but they have sometimes arranged matters so that some of their elderly representatives can draw around themselves a group of the younger neophytes and attend to them individually, such as a gardener would deal with his plants, raying upon them day and night with influences needed to awaken certain qualities or strengthen their weak points. The older helpers rarely receive direct instructions with regard to this work, though now and then the master may make some remark or comment. The fact that novices are together in groups also assists their progress. They are influenced in common by high ideas, and this hastens the growth of desirable characteristics. It is probably inevitable in the course of karmic law that one who is aspiring shall be brought into contact with someone more advanced than himself. That's why you got to find your spiritual family, people of light, and all these things, and you got to want to move up with them. You can't try to hold them down in what you want to believe. And this is where I try to help people when I clear out stuff. I bring in new stuff and I try to give positive things so that then they can grow with it. And next time I clear them, more things come in and change. And this is where I'm giving knowledge. You decide what you want to do with it. There are, however, exceptions that each master has his own way of dealing with his, I don't know how to say this word, I'd say students, but it's Catechumens. Catechumens? I don't know. I think it's just students. In one case, it has been said by our president, the master makes the practice of sending his pupils to other ends of the field so they may gain great strength by the development of their powers to the minimum of external assistance. Each individual is treated as his best, what is best for him. It has been asked whether advancement is possible for a lowly student whose karma has placed him on some remote farm or plantation, or has bound him to some spot where he is not likely to meet anyone already established on the path. Undoubtedly, such a man may make progress, and though his task is harder because he has less physical plane help, he will learn to rely upon himself and will probably develop greater willpower and determination just because he is so much alone. It will be well for him to get into correspondence with some older student who can answer his questions and advise him in his readings, as by the means much time may be saved and his way may be made smoother. And this is where I'm trying to give you all this knowledge. You can find these books and read them, or you can go on our site or wherever Cindy's putting these videos and you can gain this knowledge.